Why take omega-3 fatty acids? Why take fish oil? Well, the reason that we are such firm believers and advocates of taking a quality omega-3 fatty acid is because of how this affects inflammation. And so understand that almost every disease process out there involves some sort of inflammatory process. When organs break down, cells have a problem, cancer, heart disease, all of these things involve the inflammatory process. And so inside of our body, we have a ratio of omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids. And essentially think of omega-3 as the good stuff and omega-6 as the bad stuff, and you want this ratio of as much omega-3 and as little omega-6 as possible. And these ratios have been studied across the board, and I'm going to explain to you a little bit more about how this works and what it means. But first off, without getting too in-depth into the biochemistry of this is the stuff that we learn in school and every doctor learns in a biochemistry class before they get into whatever type of medicine or healthcare that they do. But this pathway right here shows essentially how substances in the body convert to this thing called arachidonic acid, and then how this goes into what's called a prostaglandin. Think of prostaglandins as things that cause inflammation, and then how certain drugs inhibit parts of this pathway. So for example, steroids inserted right here, like corticosteroids and things, those inhibit phospholipase A2, which stops this conversion process. It stops arachidonic acid from being produced from fatty acids inside the body. You have arachidonic acid goes into prostaglandin H2, which then goes further, so this creates more inflammation, and you have non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen, Motrin. Those are COX inhibitors. Cyclooxygenase is COX. So if you hear about a COX inhibitor, that's what that is. So now, again, without going into too much detail on this, the really interesting part is what a high omega-3 to 6 fatty acid ratio does. So having a really high quality omega-3, low omega-6, a anti-inflammatory ratio in your body, what that does is it essentially blocks arachidonic acid from moving further down that biochemical pathway into producing inflammation. So this is a very important thing to achieve, and let's talk about what this means and put this in perspective. So now a 1-to-1 ratio is ideal as far as having omega-6 to omega-3. So omega-6 is the bad one, omega-3 is the good one. If you had a 1-to-1 ratio, that is pretty much ideal across the board. That's a fairly good anti-inflammatory environment inside of your body. A 2-to-1 ratio, so having twice as much omega-6 to omega-3, okay, so still having twice as much bad to good, that's still PDG, which stands for pretty darn good. Okay, so that's still pretty darn good. Now, 8-to-1, so 8 times more omega-6 than omega-3, which is the good one, that will be an inflamed individual, pro-inflammation. That's a problem. What they show is that if you're a 12-to-1 ratio, you're pretty much doomed. You're going to have some kind of inflammatory disease, your body's in a crisis state, this is a problem, and it's going to result in some sort of ailment, something that could cause a devastating health consequence and even kill you. Now the average American, I left that blank to keep you in suspense. If you had to guess, what would you guess the average American is as far as the bad to the good? Now I just showed you 12-to-1 is doomed. The average American is 20 to 50, so a range of this to 1. So many times over the doomed category, or the doomed classification. That's a problem. So now, what are different foods and things that are high in omega-3s? Well, one way to do this is to supplement and to take a really high quality omega-3 fatty acid, but this is not where it should stop. You should also make sure you're eating other high quality omega-3 fatty acid foods, such as sardines, Atlantic wild-caught salmon, omega-3, organic eggs. Flaxseed oil is actually very, very low in EPA, which is one of the most active ingredients in the whole anti-inflammatory marker. So flax seeds is okay, but it's magnitudes lower than things like fish oil. And walnuts are also decent, but quite a bit lower. So these sources are some of the best. And so It's important to not just focus on increasing omega-3, but also decreasing omega-6. So common things that have omega-6 fatty acids in that almost everyone consumes on a daily basis and doesn't even know about is the oils that you put on top of your salad and salad dressings. So sunflower, safflower, cottonseed oil, canola oil, those are all very high in omega-6 fatty acids. You want to substitute those with like extra virgin olive oil and avocado oil and coconut oil. Those are much better oils that have a much more advantageous anti-inflammatory omega-6 containing ratio, so that when you want to, again, improve the 3 to 6 ratio, you want to eat more omega-3s, eat less omega-6s, supplement with more omega-3s, avoid omega-6s. Anything that's hydrogenated, any sort of fried fatty food becomes much more highly omega-6. So I hope that this brief video talking about the importance of omega-3 and 6 fatty acid ratios, I hope this hit home. I hope you understand this. Think about this next time you eat like some fried onion rings or French fries from somewhere, deep fried type stuff, because you're upping your omega-6. Counterbalance it by eating as much omega-3 as possible, but really just try to decrease the omega-6 intake. That's your best bang for the buck. Hope that's helpful. We'll see you in the next video.